Now, I'm going to ask you about your area of critics' responsibility in the legislature, which is Community Living BC. What is Community Living BC, and how do you see it? Where's the room for improvement?
Community Living BC is essentially a Crown corporation. It was basically set up to provide services for people with developmental disabilities. And at the time it was set up, there were many, many people who were falling through the gaps, who weren't getting the services that they need to basically survive. In our community, let alone to live a quality of life that everyone deserves. And so it's now been set up, but the problem remains, though, that many people are not getting the support that they need. In fact, in just this year's estimates debate with the minister around Community Living BC, we discovered that many people who has complex developmental disabilities are not getting the financial support for the day programs that they need. The government has an assessment tool. They will assess someone, for example, to see what level of support that you need. Many of them are at a higher level, level 4, level 5, and so on. And then on that basis, minimally, the government should be providing them 17.5 hours of day support per week. They're getting funded 2.5 hours if they're lucky. So imagine what that is like. I've asked these questions of how the government's going to resolve these issues, and isn't it the government's responsibility through CLBC to ensure that these individuals have the support that they need to live a successful and fulfilling life? It's now August. I have yet to receive an answer. Those were questions that I put to the minister back in May, back in, I think it was actually late March or April. In the spring session in any event, and they said that they would respond by mid-June. It's now August, right? Just about August, and I have yet to receive a response.
What does this mean for families if they're being provided, 2 hours instead of 17 hours?
Well, I mean, just imagine, right? And you rely on the support individuals to come and help you, to get out into the community, for you to ensure that you're safe, right, and to ensure that your needs are met. Those individuals are not there. That support is simply not there. So what it means that you live in isolation. The families, the parents who are dealing with individuals with developmental disability are stretched to the limit, stressed to the max, and are now struggling, living in frustration, living in isolation, and at wit's end. That's what some of the parents have told me, some of the individuals who are working on this. Some of them are self-advocates, and they just don't know what to do, right, at this point in time. And the government, their mandate, in fact, Don McCraig, who's the minister, just got a renewal mandate letter from the Premier, basically telling them, stay in your budget, right? But really, to be clear, the budget was inadequate. And so how are they going to deal with this? How are you going to square this circle? This year, by the way, the government claimed this is the international year. They want to recognize it as the year for people with disabilities. But yet this is how people with disabilities are being treated. Just case in point, I have another case in my office with the minister, although not with developmental disabilities, but people with disabilities, who's been needing a wheelchair. His wheelchair is broken down. The government has a rule that says you only get your wheelchair renewed every 5 years. His wheelchair is breaking down all over the place. He's afraid to go out of his house. Because he's worried that his wheelchair would break down in the middle of nowhere. And yet the government is not coming forth with the specifications for him to replace the chair so that he can actually go about living like anyone expects to, with dignity.
And can you tell the story of the wheelchair in Cantonese?
而家喺我辦公室有位朋友，佢咧就係要坐輪椅嘅，而佢個輪椅咧已經係好舊噶啦，即係5年多噶啦，就爛晒噶啦。咁佢申請同政府咧就政府協助佢買個新嘅輪椅，到此為止，政府咧都未批准俾佢買佢需要嘅輪椅。而呢個需要嘅輪椅咧係邊個話佢需要呢種咁嘅輪椅？係嗰啲醫生啦，佢嗰啲專家啦話係需要嘅，但係到此為止政府都未批准。咁樣佢而家咧真係好驚咯，坐呢個輪椅你都知道啦，佢係依靠呢個輪椅去出街去活動嘅。而如果佢個輪椅壞咗， 咁佢點算呢？甚至乎佢壞咗或者跌咗喺個輪椅出嚟，咁樣佢會點樣算呢？咁所以呢度好大嘅問題。呢年政府話係佢會最尊重傷殘嘅人士嘅，而喺呢年佢話最尊重傷殘人士之下，喺呢啲咁樣嘅情形發生，咁樣即係政府咁樣做法係啱唔啱呢？我諗大家要考慮呢一點咯。
And how does it make you feel when you hear stories like this?
Oh, I just have to tell you, it breaks my heart. I've been working, not to say, everything is partisan. I take my job very seriously as an MLA, and as the first step, what I always do is to try to resolve these issues in a cordial way with the minister in a reasonable way. I bring the issue to their attention. I get the doctor's notes and all the supporting documents to show it to them, to support the constituents, to back up what it is that they're asking for, to which, in my view, is not at all unreasonable. And then when they don't respond, then I have to think of other alternative tactics to try and get the support that the constituents need. But really, at the end of the day, I think we just need to use common sense. I think we need to ask this question. How would we ourselves like to be treated if we were in that position? Is it okay for you to be homebound, unable to get out into the community, unable to live a fulfilling life? Is that what we want? And do we want to reduce individuals to that level simply because they don't have the support that they need? It's not good enough. We live in Canada, not in a third world country. We can do better, and we must do better. So I feel, anger and sadness all at the same time. And so as the MLA, what do? I do my level best, right, to advocate on their behalf, to bring the issue to the minister's attention in the hopes that the voices of the people would be heard and the action would be taken.
And when you look at, say, someone like Rich Coleman, who's one of the most powerful ministers in government, deputy premier, basically the fundraiser for the Liberal Party campaign, the czar of housing. If you were to give him a letter grade, what would you give him? Say you were the teacher and Rich Coleman was the student.
Well, I suppose it depends, right? I mean, but really, if you want to talk about the housing issue, not me. The Auditor General actually did a report on the housing issue and how the government's managed this file. And the criticism that comes from the Auditor General include the fact that the government actually don't have a comprehensive plan. They don't even know what the base number is in terms of the homelessness rate across the province of British Columbia. So all of those things matter. And I would say that you need to devise this plan and to work with people around it. Not to threaten, for example, when the local government, criticizes the senior level of government, they threatened, and they sort of get into an argument about this and that, but rather to just speak calmly. Maybe do what we had tried to do when I was a minister with Philip Owen, as the mayor, and then with Hedy Fry as the federal liaison with the federal government when we brought about the supervised injection facility. We set aside our partisan politics and say, let's start from scratch. We build trust with each other and get something delivered for the community to save lives. That was our focus, and that's what we worked on. Maybe we need to do that for housing, just to set aside all the partisan stuff and the blame game, and get all three levels of government together to say, what do we need? We have a housing crunch and a crisis in our hands. What do we need to do? And let's devise a plan to say, provincial level of government, here's what we can do. Municipal level of government, here's what you can do. Federal government, here's what you can do. And together, collectively, let's act and build those partnerships for housing. If the government did that, if Rich Coleman did that, I would give him an A+, hands down.
My understanding of how that process emerged, which led to the Vancouver Agreement, where you were the lead BC minister, Hedy Fry was kind of quarterbacking it at the federal level, at the local level, and Philip Owen was that the mayor was holding a Vancouver caucus meeting where he would get all of the elected representatives for Vancouver, whether it was city, whether it was federal, and whether it was provincial, in the same room. My understanding is that's not even happening anymore, and I'm wondering, do you think we need to get back to that situation where people can set aside their partisan differences, sit in the same room, identify major problems, and work toward a solution?
Well, I hope that we can. do that. I mean, we haven't had those meetings for a very long time. That said, it doesn't matter who initiates it. It just needs to be initiated. Even if you just said, look, we can't take it all on. There are too many issues. And so we're going to focus on one thing that we can deliver and work on it to make sure we deliver it well. I would argue that housing would be one of them, right? Because housing is like one of those things. Homelessness is like one of those things. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to find the solutions. We know what the solutions are. People in the community knows what the solutions are. It's about building housing, making the units safe, secure, and affordable, available to the people in their community. So let's get on with it. And there are people, by the way, in the nonprofit sector, in the charitable community, in the business community, everywhere who want to help. They want to help, and they're sort of doing their thing as well. So let's pull everybody together to say, what can we all do together in a collaborative way? And let's devise a long-term plan. Let's be open and accountable to measure that about our success, right? And let's do a count, a true count of how many people who are homeless. I'm not just talking about street homelessness. I'm talking about people who are couch surfing and so on, right? There are many, many people. And let's devise a plan and say, you know, this is doable. And what we need is political will. And I think that we can do it. It's not impossible, right? It's not like trying to find a cure to cancer where we don't know what the answers are. We know what the answers are. And even with cancer, we're making tremendous strides. Surely, on homelessness, we can do better than this.
Well, I want to thank you very much, Jenny Kwan, the MLA, NDP MLA for Vancouver Mount Pleasant. And Jenny Kwan was first elected in 1996. I remember when she was a city councillor. I'm giving away my age, 1993 to 1996, and it's clear from this interview she hasn't lost her fire and her passion. So I want to thank you very much for watching WOW TV. I'm Charlie Smith, editor of the Georgia Straight, and have a great week.
感谢收看今天的大温故事，我们下期再见。